Hey everyone, welcome to the Worship Artistry Podcast, brought to you by worshipartistry.com. I'm Ryan King, the keyboard instructor for Worship Artistry, and with me today is our bass guru, Daniel Ornea. Say hey, Daniel.
Hey, that's me, Daniel Ornelas, with an L.
Oh, with the L, sorry. I thought it was kind of like Spanish, with a yeah. So, anyways.
Very close. Yeah, that's good. I like
awesome.
that.
Sorry, I'm in South Florida, so the double
true.
L's have the
The Y sound.
That's right. And over in our chat room today is Bethany Flint. She'll be filtering and taking your questions that we'll answer at the end. And unfortunately, Jason is sick today. He's out with a flu, and I spoke with him earlier today, and he doesn't have a voice. So I'm filling in for him today kind of as host, and that means that me and Daniel are just going to kind of talk about whatever we want to.
It's glorious.
So,
Jason's sick. That's not cool. He can't. First of all, he can't go on The Voice. So he doesn't have a voice. And secondly, he's sick in more than one way because he's a sick guitar player, but he's also physically sick. Laryngitis.
That's right. This is true.
That's a bad joke. That's a dad joke, I think.
Is that a South African joke? I don't know.
I don't know. It must be.
Well, cool. Today we are talking about leading worship on the road, and I know that's something that I've got some experience with. And Daniel, I know that you've got a lot of experience with that. So why don't you just kind of give us some of your background and a little bit of the experience that you've had?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. So I guess I was a pastor's kid growing up in South Africa. I started playing in worship as an acoustic guitar when I was about 10 or 11 years old, I guess, in church. And then I moved on to bass, and I was in a worship band called Naked Lyric. That's an amazing name for a worship band. You can only get away with that in Africa. And we toured all over the world. We did Cross Rhythms Festival in the UK, and we played all over South Africa in that band, and that was like a worship band. We used to play all those early Delirious cutting edge songs. We're talking about 1997, 98, 99, right about there. At that stage, I was already friends with Brenton Brown, who was writing a lot of the songs for our band, and that's before he wrote Lord Reign in Me and all those songs that became big Vineyard songs, in the 90s.
Right.
So, yeah, and then after that, I moved over here with a band called Tree 63, which is like a big kind of modern rock worship band, I guess. We had the big single "Blessed Be Your Name" on the radio for a long time, which you still hear quite a bit on the radio.
Right.
And then I connected up with Brenton again after he went to Oxford, and he came over here and we started touring for 8 years. I did that, and because of that, I guess I went on the Worship Together tour, which was Matt Maher, Tim Hughes, and I played with Gunga. We were the house band for that.
Oh, wow.
So I've done all that and played with One Sonic Society and Matt Maher and Paul Balash, just a bunch of different people over the last few years. And then I have a band called the Worship Republic, which was actually Brenton Brown and the Worship Republic, but now I go and lead on my own with a new band for that band. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. It sounds like you've kind of really run the gamut of being kind of all over the place and playing with a bunch of artists and things like that. So that's
it's been interesting. The funny thing is that when people say what's the difference between leading worship on a Sunday and leading worship like you guys do, and the difference is quite amazing. It's actually this. So you guys who lead worship in church have to lead the same people with hundreds of different songs. We lead to different people with the same 10 songs. So really the difference is that we kind of have multiple audiences, and we playing those same songs over and over, usually to those different audiences. So that's the big difference if you want to say what is playing worship on the road. And
awesome.
So that's what I would say about that.
Well, very cool. Well, we're going to talk about that today, but before we get to that, we're going to take some member mail, and we've got a question here that I think is right up your alley, Dan, and it's from Josh. He writes, I'm looking to buy a new bass. I see a lot of guys playing 5-string basses. Is this necessary, or should I stick with just a 4-string?
Yeah, interesting. This is a question that obviously poses a few other questions. One of the thoughts is, I don't know what style of music you're playing in your church. If you're playing Israel, or if you're playing Hillsong United, or if you're playing, the guys from United Pursuit or any of the. There's lots of different bands and genres, I guess. So it kind of depends what you're playing. What is the bulk of the music you're playing? And nowadays you can actually go online and look at the guys in the band and go, what's he playing? Because if you've got a whole bunch of keys stuff happening and all the arrangements are set for a guy to play 4-string bass, then you don't really need that 5th string. But I was just over with Vertical Church guys this week, talking to them, and they've just tracked their new record here in Nashville, and there's 5-string bass on a bunch of that stuff. So if you're going to be playing that stuff, then you'd want that extra B string, and a lot of it's to do with what key your worship leader sings in. If your worship leader loves playing an E flat, you're going to hate your life if you're on a 4-string because you just can't go to a low E flat. Or if they sing in D a lot or C, you want that low string for your big choruses. So you can either choose to tune down your 4-string, which is what I would rather do. I'd have my 4-string set up in like D as my low string, and that would be the answer for me. I really enjoy the sound of 4-string basses as opposed to 5 strings. Something happens with a 5-string when you add that 5th string to the neck. It kind of pulls a lot more tension on the neck, so the other 4 strings below it feel and sound different to me. They don't have that same kind of energy that you'd have out of just 4 strings on the neck. Yeah. That's not to say that I don't like 5-string basses. It's just that for the kind of music that I've always played, which is like the Police meets U2, or like that's the sound that I've been playing in like Tomlin, or all that kind of Brenton Brown, Tomlin, that kind of pop worship,
right,
rock style worship music. 4-string bass has done the job for me.
I'm sure is there like also kind of a technique difference too? I mean, I'm sure adding a 5th string, if you've been kind of a 4-string player for a long time, I know just being a worship leader, I've had guys come in and try to play 5-string basses, and it's like a whole new instrument for them. Is that?
For me, not so much just in the sense that they always go up in 5ths. So it's if you play by ear pretty well and you're not reading tabs a lot and you're not always like, where am I on this thing?
Right.
Then if you go down to, if you're playing for example, if you're playing a D on the low G string, on the low B string, which is on the 3rd fret, that would be like as if you're playing a G on an E string. You just start from there. On bass, all of it's about patterns. You can move the same song just up 2 frets and the patterns are always going to stay the same. Just remembering that, and the only time you're going to really come short is if you're so used to a 4-string and you're looking and you see a G come up on the charts and you reach up for the low string and hit the 3rd fret, you're going to be playing a D instead of a G. And that's where you make those kind of mistakes. But if you play by ear, and it won't take you long to transition onto a 5. It's not really like learning pedal steel as opposed to electric guitar or anything like that. Yeah,
I played with a guy once who his favorite bass player of all time was John Patitucci.
Oh, wow.
He had a 6-string, and I think he even had a 7-string bass, and I was just like, why?
He could cut that neck into 2 and make 2 really nice instruments as opposed to one really bad one.
Oh yeah, definitely. And what was great was that he was just playing worship stuff, Tomlin and all that. I'm like, I don't think you need that 6th string, bro.
Yeah, the problem with that is it just opens up the opportunity for you to play too much, which is already a problem. That's why I say you just don't want to have that opportunity to play down there. I hardly even play my G string a bunch in most of the worship songs, and as you know, for worship artistry, when we're teaching these songs and how they were played on the record, some of these songs I could literally just play with the top 2 strings and play the whole song.
Right.
And so you just want to make sure that you don't get tempted into shredding away. You're not an electric guitar player. You got to hold down the groove. You got to play the root notes mainly and the parts that are on the record. And so that if you've got 7 or 8 strings, it's just too tempting to start wailing around.
Right.
It's like you having a guitar and running around in spandex.
Well, what's funny enough is that I do own a guitar.
Glorious.
Yes.
I like that.
I'll have to use it one day on a lesson maybe.
I like that.
So, well, cool. Well, hey, Josh, thanks for writing in. And for those who are listening, be sure to become a member, and we'll answer any questions that you send our way. So, before we jump in, we're going to take a quick little break, and we'll be back in just a few moments.
Hey Josh, one of the most common comments we get here at Worship Artistry is that someone finally figured out how to teach on the internet. Should we tell the people what Worship Artistry is?
Sure. Worship Artistry is an online resource featuring full 5-piece band arrangements of all the latest worship songs.
Yeah, a lot of churches don't have the 12-piece band to cover all the parts on the latest tunes, but still want to sound like the original recording. Worship Artistry takes the master recordings and breaks them down into parts for electric, acoustic, bass, drums, and keyboard. And when you put them together on Sunday, they sound just like the record.
And what makes it so brilliant is the lessons are super easy to navigate, so your beginners get tons of video instructions with charts, tabs, and sheet music, while your advanced players can simply watch playthroughs of each part and be on their way.
The other thing that's beautiful is worship pastors can rest easily knowing we've done our homework in the licensing department, so it's all legit.
Yeah, man, no shady internet hijinks going on here.
So head over to worshipartistry.com and sign up for your free trial. Now let's get back to this podcast.
So today we're talking about leading worship on the road. And, you know, Daniel, I know that, I've gone out on the road some and led worship. And I've also been a worship pastor, and I've led the same congregation, week after week after week.
Yeah.
And I know this is something that a lot of aspiring musicians kind of want to do. They want to go out on the road. That's kind of like the thing to do. It's like if you've gone out on the road, then you've like arrived or something like that. And I know that there are a lot of questions to consider and a lot of questions that people have when trying to decide, should they go out on the road to lead worship or just go out on the road to be an artist or whatever it might be. Yeah. And so, I know one of the...
Yeah, carry on.
Go ahead.
You good?
I was gonna say that one of them is why would you ever go out on the road? And so for a guy like you, you've been out on the road pretty much your entire life. So what would you have to say to that?
That's interesting because that's what I was going to say is there's so many different variations of what it means to be on the road. I mean, when people used to say to us at the gigs we were like, are you guys on tour right now? I was like, man, we permanently on tour. But there's, I guess, the understanding of being on tour means you're on a string of cities that have been set up by one promoter, and it's all got it's got one name. The whole tour is being bought by different promoters. So that's an example of being on the road. Like your tour is 3 months long. You're going to do 60 cities, and that's a tour. But we were mainly doing spot dates, which means that we were playing different venues every weekend and being booked by different people for different type of events. And if you're like an artist that lives in a town, or you're a worship leader at your church, but you're writing original music, the chances are you're already probably playing other places than your church. You might be invited to play at a wedding. You might be invited to lead at a different church. Is that being on the road? The definition of being out there on the road is kind of like it's kind of an odd thing to think about. What does it mean? Does it mean you go out for 5 days of the year to play shows in different cities? Does it mean going like beyond the border of your state to be on the road? So to just define what people are thinking of, because there's like this weird idea that you can either be a church guy that leads worship on Sunday, or else, you can be a touring musician that does, but I do a bunch of things. I lead worship here. I play in my church in Nashville when I'm at home. And then I also do, weekend events with the Westfall group, and I go and play to a group of people, like a corporate event for 3 or 4 days at one place. And then sometimes we'll go, to get an anchor date in one city, and then play a couple of shows in California around that where people can book you. And it's often to do with people being able to afford to have you come along. And so all those things. And do you have appeal to be able to command a certain, what's your market value? And this is talking kind of about the side of it, about the financial side of it, is what is your market value as a band? Because certain bands can say, if Matt Redman's coming to town, people will be willing to pay a certain amount of money to have him come in and play. And that then he gets to pay his band properly. They get to hire good sound and lighting equipment, so that that they put on an event that's at the level that he would want to be able to perform at, so that people go, wow, that was awesome. That's what I would expect from Matt. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you kind of have to get into that conversation if you talk about being out on the road. Is it affordable? Or sometimes you could see it as a missions thing, where your church sends you out to do events for other churches, to go and help, bolster other worship teams in smaller churches. I have a friend called Scott Brownson. He's up in Montana, and there's very few rock bands that are up in Montana, or worship kind of artists. But he's from he's actually runs a Christian camp up there, but he goes and he helps all the little churches in Wyoming and Montana. And so he's on the road for a certain amount of the year. And what his real function is he's getting to lead worship in congregations that just need a breath of fresh air, because their guy is kind of like feeling out there like he's on his own in the middle of nowhere with no help. And sometimes it's cool to come in as a person with a bit of experience and say, hey, I'm here to lead your guys in worship and help encourage your congregation and make you guys feel like you're part of a bigger thing than just your local church. So I guess that I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, and definitely I've had being a worship leader down here in South Florida, we've had a lot of Christian concerts come to our church. We brought in Jeremy Camp, Matthew West, all these guys, and we've brought in their tours where they have, you've got the headlining artist, and then you probably have somebody kind of mid-level, and then you've got somebody who's just starting off. And so I know with a lot of those starting off groups that many of those guys are barely making ends meet financially.
Absolutely.
They're just trying to really make their dream come true as far as being an artist and musician. So those are definitely things to weigh out. And I know a lot of those musicians who, if they're married, they're out on the road trying to make ends meet from that while their spouse is at home and kind of pulling the weight a little bit more, maybe from a financial standpoint to help build that. So
I mean, that's the reality, is that some people think it's they have some idea of what it means, and so they have their wife at home with a full-time job so they can be out there being Peter Pan for the rest of their lives, and I think there's stuff to weigh up in all of those decisions. Some of them are obviously like, you don't want to be out there on the road and then in 5 years you're divorced, but you still want to go and think you can go and lead worship, because your whole integrity is wrapped around how you are with your marriage and how you are with your family. And that's the most important thing. If your wife's not into you being out there, then you're chasing down a ghost. It doesn't exist, And then also there's two things I'd love to cover in this conversation. One of them is a lot of senior pastors feel like if their worship leader goes to play somewhere else, he's cheating on them.
Right.
Like he's out there trying to use the church as a stepping stone to get into a music career.
Right.
And then I've met other people, like a lot of the bigger churches like Hillsong, or the ones that have their whole actual church is exploding because of the fact that there is music that's reaching beyond their church walls. And those guys have got this vision that the church band or the worship guy or the songwriter is actually an extension of their church, and when they get to go and play an event somewhere else, that it's like their church sending them out as a mission, or it's like, hey, go and play, and we're behind you 100%. And I would love to have that conversation with a lot of senior pastors to say, your guy is not trying to become Katy Perry when he goes to play a concert. He's just going to serve, and maybe the guy's motivation is to be like, I don't want to do this worship gig anymore, or wish I could just be Jeremy Camp. And that's something that's a deeper question. And if you're never going to be satisfied doing your worship for your church, and you always wished you were out there, maybe go and do it, because you'll realize very quickly that it's not as simple as you think it is. That labels are not doing development deals like they used to in the old days, because there's not enough people buying CDs. So you either have to be already a big established artist, or you have to have a huge amount of social media following or something. There's not just like, wow, you're talented, let's sign you to a record label. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, definitely. The on the church side of things, there's such a churches can be very territorial, both about their just the church themselves, wherever they might be, and then territorial of their staff, territorial of their musicians, and I think that's definitely something. I mean, the church is here to reach the lost, to reach into your community, and so definitely being able to take your worship team and start to branch out. I mean, that's, you take Casting Crowns for instance. I mean, that's how they got started. They were the worship band at their church, or their youth for their youth group, or something like that, and then they just kind of evolved into what they are now. And so you've got guys like that, but guys like Mark Hall and those from Casting Crowns, I don't believe that they had the aspiration of I want to be famous. I want to make it big. They were just doing what God called them to do, and then God just kind of blessed their efforts and multiplied that, and kind of and then took what they were doing on a local level and flourished it into something that went global. So I think there's a lot to be said behind the attitude behind what you're wanting.
Absolutely, and the other thing, Ryan, is that people try and put the cart before the horse, as far as like their motivation. If you look for your heart's motivation of why do you want to go and play somewhere else other than in your church, is it you want recognition from your peers? Do you want Toby Mac to say, wow, you actually wrote a great worship song? Or what is your motivation to get out there? And if your motivation is that, then often people are pushing to be out there before anything is demanding them to be out there. There's a whole thing about supply and demand. The reason Casting Crowns is massively touring the world is because there's a huge demand to hear them minister the songs that they've written and that have come out through Christian radio. And so if you're writing songs that are kind of getting out there and people in your neighboring churches are starting to sing those songs, it's going to make a doorway for you to be able to, people are going to go, hey, come and play. Or Brenton's written Everlasting God, and he just got nominated for a Grammy for Soul on Fire. So he's writing these type of songs that are getting people to say, wow, that's amazing, can't you come and play and lead our congregation in worship, or come play those songs. And it's like the horse is leading the cart. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Whereas as opposed to saying, like, I think I've got a good voice and I like the songs that I've written, so I'm going to go and try and play them places, And
I guess that's why we hear in the Word when He says, "Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added." And
absolutely.
So to really pursue after what the Lord is wanting you to do. So, do you think that there's a specific, if these people are and musicians are, contemplating should they go out on the road, maybe they're feeling kind of a call to do that. Is there a good time to do that? As far as when they should try to.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of thoughts. It depends what your position is in your church. If you're an established worship pastor and your job is to pastor your team, and you feel like your team is really doing well and you could leave without them falling apart, and there's someone that could lead worship on the Sunday and take it and people wouldn't even miss you, then you've done your job well and you're secured in that place. Also, you need to remember that the relationship with your pastor, it can't be you sneaking behind his back to go and play something and sell a few CDs. If you can get the buy-in from your team that and they give you a specific amount of days. I got a friend that I produced a record for who gets, I think he gets, if I'm not mistaken, like 15 weekends a year that he can go and play, and that's a decision that their church made with him, and he books those events wherever he wants to. He can go and set those up to go and play the launch of his new record, or he can do whatever he wants to, and he works that out with them. They feel like he's doing a great job leading their team, so he's got that all set up beforehand, and they treat him as an artist in residence. Which it's a kind of a term that people are using in churches now, to where they have someone in their church that's an artist, but they're also a resident artist, which means they're the worship leader of that church. So there's a few questions to be answered. A, can you leave without it being bad for your relationships with your family, with the pastor of your church, and and if you're in that situation where if you feel like someone really can't handle the fact that you want to go and play out there, then is that their jealousy that that they want you to think that you're big stuff, or so then and I've met a few people like that. I'm like, man, your church really seems like they're holding you back in a terrible way. So you got to weigh all that stuff up, because there could be some other weird stuff going on that the church doesn't like you being out there. They think you it's the same as if a songwriter is a worship leader and they pick up their guitar in the morning and they're writing a song in their church office, and the pastor comes by and says, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm writing a song." And they go, "Well, don't you want to do some work?" And you go, "Hang on a second, do you want me to write worship songs or not?" And I've honestly had that conversation with people where they go, "No, I don't want you to write worship songs. I want you to go and get planning center. I want you to go visit sick people. I want you to go do this. And so your job description, if you work that stuff out ahead of time, even when we're talking about getting a worship job, if you can share that openly and say, I'd love to lead worship for your church, but at the same time, there's this other calling that I feel. And if you can see that working together with the fact that I can lead your team, and then let's talk. But if not, because it's not gonna, it's something you have to have that conversation. It's almost like my wife and I, before I got married, I said to her, hey, I'm a musician. There's a good chance, A, we'll be running around traveling the world a lot, and B, we might never become really wealthy. If you want to have a lot of money, then marry an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor. But the chances are that we're going to be, and here we are living in the USA, and she even foresaw that. She thought, imagined herself with 2 children on her hip with me on a tour bus, somewhere.
Right.
And she thought, I can still do that. So,
yeah.
And I've seen other people where they didn't have that conversation up front, with their worship pastor, and then they think, man, I'd love to do something. The other thing is, it can't just be something you think you have to do because everybody else is doing it. It's got to be. It's got to be like when people come to me and say, I want to make a record. I say to them, why do you want to make a record? And they go, everybody else has a record. And I go, that's not a good enough reason. Like, why do you want to record your songs? Yeah. Why are you going to waste a whole bunch of your resources if you don't have a plan for it? If you've got no, and if they go, well, actually, people keep asking me for my songs, and there's no way I can get them to them. Okay, now you're starting to get a reason to record, to spend money on a thing. And then at the same time, if you have your church behind you, they see you as their artist or their worship leader, and you record something, the support that you'll get for being able to raise the resources properly, to record well, all those things come into play because your church buys into the fact that they love the fact that you're an artist. Yeah. And often if you've got that calling, people can see it when you lead on Sunday. They go, man, you should just be out there doing, man, if you got on The Voice, or man, your songs that you're writing for Sunday, the churches all over the world should be singing that. Yeah. And those are the things that if you're hearing those kind of things happen, maybe there is that thing where you should work it out. And I don't think there's like a definitive, either you're a touring musician or you're a worship leader. You could have both.
Yeah. Well, I think you're a perfect example of that. And, because you teach, you tour, you record, you do all these things. And so there's not this, like it used to be years ago, where there's just this cut and dry, I'm an artist, I'm on tour, that's all I do.
It doesn't work like that anymore.
No, especially because of the finances of it.
Yeah, it's not it's not straightforward. I mean, unless you're in the biggest band like a 10th Avenue North or a Tomlin, or and you're selling a lot of merchandise, you can't really make a living just doing that, and your wife's at home with the kids. I mean, I've got friends, very close friends, that have gone on the road with a record label deal, and they haven't been able to make enough money doing that with their wife, with their little babies at home. So they've quit that completely and taken a worship leader job. And I'm talking about people that are signed to the biggest Christian label there is. Right, it's just that there's not enough in it. And they have to pay. They have to pay to be on the road to break themselves. And
they gotta make it work. And I mean, I've known a lot of different bands, and I mean, typically in those situations, the only people who make money are going to be the songwriter, the record label, and probably the producer. And that's
the tour bus driver.
Exactly, and that's the reason why I know many guys who are in the band, they become the bus driver so that they can
earn a bit more money.
Yeah, make a little bit more money. So, what do you find are, we've kind of talked around a lot of different things. What do you find are some of the challenges for specifically going out on the road? Like somebody just makes the decision, okay, they've had that conversation with their pastor, and they've gotten some time that they can go out. They've talked to their spouse or whatever. They're able to go out. And so what do you find are some challenges that they need to be aware of as they start down that road?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. I always talk to people about this idea of having a bank balance of desire to do this thing, to be out there playing, and whatever debits that bank account and doesn't fill it up is going to eventually make that balance that you have of desire to want to be out there playing. It's going to either fill it up or deplete it. And once it's gone, it's gone. And for different people, it's different. For me, I just love being around people, and I love connecting with people. So if the show's small, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't debit my bank account negatively. If we get, as long as if the sound is horrendous, that's kind of like knocks my debit, that like hits me negatively. So some of the challenges that you got to work out, you have to work them out soon, because when you're initially getting into it and you're so excited to just be out there, you come away either kind of happy after what you did, or you kind of like, oh, that sucked, let's try better next time. And you got to start identifying those things that make you either want to do this more or not want to do this more.
Right.
For some people, it's people loving their original music. Some people don't care what they play as long as there's people there and they're having fun. Other
Right.
people are all about their art, the songs they're writing, and can they get to play those songs. Other people are about, like, is this growing and is it growing to where that's bigger and bigger and the audiences are getting bigger and bigger. Some people are like, is this paying more and more money? Is it growing in that way? To me, it's never really ever been about the money, and it's never been about getting more and more famous. That's why I can go out and play with a smaller band like a Brenton, as opposed to playing at Billy Graham's Last Crusade with 363, because that would be like the peak, if you want to call it that, of my
Right.
touring. But I don't get affected by that. If there's 12 people in this office right here, I'll play and sing a couple of songs and have a good time. So if you got to work out, though, for other people it's not that way. Some people
Right.
get to a certain point where they go, man, if I have another gig with bad sound, then I'm done.
Yeah.
So making sure that you work out what those triggers are, and then can you do anything about them? If you can, then buy yourself a sound system, but that means you're going to have to play close to your house so that you can drive with it, or take a sound guy on the road with you, and that means you have to spend some more of your money that you would have made. But if it's going to help you to be out there, and money's not what it's about, then that could work for you, to take another sound guy who's going to do the merchandise and is going to help sell your CDs. Or some people can't handle a lot of people around them all the time. They're not, even though they're front men of bands, they're actually introverts. So when they play, after they finish, people come running up to them to talk, and it freaks them out. And so you've got to try and work out, can you handle that? Or should you get someone to say, hey, so-and-so will be out in a little while to talk to you guys, and then get a breather first before you go and speak to people after you've played. There's so many different things, but there literally are triggers that are going to make you either love doing this or hate doing this. And if you can work out what they are, the sooner you work them out, and the sooner you can take care of fixing those things, the better.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of guys who had aspirations to move to Nashville, because Nashville is one of the music capitals of the world. And so they made the move. They got on a tour, and then they quickly found out what the road was like, that it's not, being put up in 5-star hotels every weekend, and they realize, oh, I'm having to eat Subway sandwiches for the umpteenth dozen, time, and you're on a van where the AC breaks down and you've got 12 hours to drive in the middle of the summer, stuff like that. And so those are lots of things, like you said, those are triggers that can really make or break that desire for wanting to be on the road. And you really have to kind of get your mind in order in the beginning to be able to do that. And you got to be definitely, do you like to travel? A lot of people say, oh, I'd travel anywhere. But then when they start traveling, they're like, oh, this ain't for me. Having to be, in a Suburban with 6 other guys for, weeks on end or whatever it might be. So, and then just the fact of being a people person, because you're not just going to stand on stage and play your tunes. You're also going to have to
interact with folks.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just through social media. It's one-on-one, signing CDs, all that kind of stuff, and really getting to know people while you're out there. So and then there are definite challenges. You're gonna have your car break down, your sound's gonna just go kaput, and all that. So especially if you're doing it by yourself, and as well as being with an actual record label and that sort of thing. So
yeah, absolutely. So for me then, like, just to reiterate what I'm thinking, there's easier ways to go about doing this, and then there's the hard way to do it. And one of them would be like, I'm dropping everything, I've got nothing to go on, but I'm just going to drive to Nashville and start living there and hope that something happens. That's just like the hardest, longest, most crazy way to do it, because when you hear people seem like, if you're desperate, it's even less chance that you're going to even get hurt. People that are here and they're going, I have to be here, I have to do this. There's like a desperation. Whereas like a Phil Wickham is a great example. He was in a church in Maranatha in San Diego, and when I met him, he wasn't even really he wasn't a signed artist. He just made his first little independent record, and I was like, man, this guy's really great. He's got an amazing voice. And his dad, who was really a great guy, still worship leader at their church in San Diego, he was like, man, Philip's got a really cool record, and he handed it to me, and I listened to it, and I took it back home. And then I told a few people that were in different record labels about him at the time. And then, he started doing shows in San Diego, like these worship events, and kids started coming to see him play that just were like, wow, Philip, this guy's amazing. And eventually he could draw like 3,000 kids at a gig, in San Diego. And that caused all the labels in Nashville to say, who's this guy out there in California that's able to draw so many people to come and see him play? And then I heard the A&R guys talking about him, and all of them started saying, hey, have you heard of Phil Wickham? Have you heard of this guy? And then there's this big, like, we want to sign him. No, we want to sign him, and it became this, he basically bloomed where he was planted. He grew out of his community where he lived. That's what you have to do. It's the way to do it. It's the way forward. You want to, because you have the support of your family, you have the support of your church. You probably have a church van that you can drive to the gigs in that are within a close radius. That's the easy way to do this. Right. The hard way is to pack up your junk and move somewhere and then hope that someone's going to discover you. And so there's a couple of those thoughts that I have about that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. Well, guys, I think we've pretty much answered some of these, main questions as far as kind of some of these technical things on being on the road. But definitely some of the other things that I think about is the spiritual side of being the road. I've known guys that have gone out on the road and they were just they were very spiritually grounded before they hit the road, and then they hit the road. And you're traveling, you're tired, you're performing, you're leading, you're doing concerts, and so the idea of being able to find that daily personal time, with the Lord and spending time in His Word and really staying close to His heart, I think is very important, and that many aspiring musicians, there's that glitz and glamour of being out on the road. And that kind of falls by the wayside, and so, so I think that's just something that is definitely important to stay up on, is the spiritual side of things. Because that's the reason that you're doing it. You're not doing it to just, especially in the worship world, to do it to be famous. You're there to lead people to Jesus, and you can't really lead somebody where you've never been. So. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the weird thing that, if you wanted to say, like, I've been around so much of this stuff now, that the weird thing is that people start to blur the lines between being, Coldplay, like a mainstream rock star, and then a worship rock star. Or just a worship artist. And so it's like people can easily start to think, hey, I should be wearing these type of leather jackets and these kind of shoes, otherwise blah blah blah, and you start building up this idea that you have to kind of, if you're going to do it, you have to do it like that, otherwise it's not really authentic. So there's this weird, like, do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah.
It's like this blurred line of like what you do for a living. When people go, oh, you guys in a band, when you climb on the airplane, that's their perception is then that you're like living the life of rock and roll. You're out there doing whatever you've heard the Rolling Stones are getting up to, but you're actually in a worship band. And it's like, it's not the same thing, and in some ways it is, which is because you travel, you fly, you go play shows, you set up sound systems, you play gigs. And so I think that the key, like you're talking about, is to sustainability, to being able to do this long term, like myself or other people that are still doing it after 20 something years, is your motivation, your heart's motivation of why you're doing this. Because it's eventually you're gonna work out, I'm never gonna be the Rolling Stones if I'm playing worship music. So your choice is either to go and get a mainstream gig and try and do that again some other way. It's not a gateway into rock and roll worship music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like a I couldn't make it in the mainstream music world, so I'm going to play worship music.
Right.
And I've met bands, I'm serious, on the road that were signed to a record label, and they had some kind of sort of spiritual content. So they started playing the Christian festivals because that's the only place they could get a gig. That stuff's weird to me. And I've seen the other way around. I've seen Christian bands that are really great get invited into the mainstream thing, and then when they realize, hey, I could be like Bono. Then suddenly they'd dump all their Christian gigs and say, I'm not going to do that anymore because I'm going to do this. Right. And it just gets weird. It's just weirdness.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for tuning into this, and I hope that we've been able to answer questions about leading worship on the road and give you some things to think about as far as whether or not you should do it and when you should do it, and definitely be sure to tune in next time. And now we're going to go ahead and take some questions for the guys that we have live here, so why don't we do that? That sound good to you, Daniel?
That sounds great. That sounds really good.
Awesome.
I see a comment on the right-hand side here, just that someone else is saying they love that Casting Crowns has a traveling pastor touring with them. That's really cool. That's something that often is a really cool thing, is the accountability aspect. It's kind of has to be unless you've got money like Casting Crowns, you can't afford to pay a pastor to be on the road full time.
Yeah.
But thinking about that when you're going out there and having that conversation with someone in your church that you can say, hey, we're going to be doing this and I'd like to be accountable. My first band, all of us were single. So we had a deal where we wouldn't take anybody out on a date unless the accountability guy knew about it, because people looked at our band as like, a lot of people looked up to us, and there was quite a few churches that we were like their band, that they looked up to. And so the idea was, if I was out with someone on a date, and they were like, I wonder what he's doing with that girl, they could call our leadership guy, and he'd say, oh, I know who she is, and it's not serious, they're just friends, or oh, he actually does like her, and I know about it, they're out on a date, or whatever it was. It just made it much easier for me to know that no one's going to be able to say something weird about it the next day. You know what I mean?
Yep. Definitely.
Cool. So what are those questions?
We got one over here. It says, how do you recommend getting started getting worship gigs? I know for me, I remember back in college, I started traveling with Big Daddy Weave. And I remember, that whole group started off of basically a kind of a spoof talent show that we had at the university. And I remember we would tour around, and I say tour, but we were just local, and we did, all these different youth events, and man, I can remember we did D-Nows, we did church gigs, we did concerts, we did wedding receptions, we kind of did anything and everything that we could do. And we did it because we were having fun. And I can remember for the longest time, Mike Weaver, who's, the lead singer for Big Daddy Weave, he was very methodical about the whole getting signed. There were labels that were interested in all that kind of stuff, but he didn't just want to go with any label, and he was very smart about it. And I think they're a great example of how they stuck to who they were in the beginning, and they had a very cool niche. But as far as getting gigs, you start. I think you start playing, and people start liking what you're doing, and you get a following, and your name starts spreading. Even down here, we just had a Disciple Now weekend at our church, and one of the guys who led for it, he's led for it probably for 4 or 5 years now, and that's because he's local down here. He's a worship leader at his church, and he's just kind of got that following, and that's kind of where he stayed, and he's content to stay there. He doesn't have this necessarily this huge aspiration to try to be a Casting Crowns or a Toby Mac or anything like that. He's found his niche, and he's kind of staying in that lane. And so he's made a name for himself with kind of that whole youth group, Disciple Now leading kind of thing. And so he gets a lot of gigs that way. So I think that when you find that niche, definitely stick into it.
That's great. That's great, Ryan. Like I'd mentioned earlier, the whole idea of blooming where you're planted if you start to look for opportunities around your area there, or if you're in a church that's connected to other churches, you could start by saying, hey, do you guys know if there's any of our other sister churches or pastors that our senior pastor or some of the pastors have a relationship with that might enjoy our music at their venue? And you start just playing that kind of around the area, or maybe there's sister churches in other cities that would be like, we trust you guys because you come from so and so's church, come and play. Those are the really good ways to get your feet wet and start getting out there to play. There's a band, the Andy Needham Band, who I used to write songs with for a little while. They were up in the northeast, and so when they got to a point where they could draw quite a decent crowd as a worship band, and what they did was, whenever the bigger artists came through town, like a Jeremy Camp, and they were looking for an opening band, the first band they'd go to would be the Andy Needham Band, because they had organized. They had one of the bass player was the manager, and he was working really hard to build relationships and get the opportunities to play. And then whenever those bigger bands came through, they'd be like, who could we get that would draw some more people to this event? And they'd say, well, Andy Needham Band can draw a little bit of a crowd, so let's get them to open for us. And they grew bigger and bigger and bigger because they were playing with all the bigger artists that came through their area. Mm-hmm. Or if your area has a festival, or if they have something close by and you're local, then they don't have to pay to fly you in. Mm-hmm. They can pay you a lot less to come and play, so you could get to play with some of those other artists, which brings the perception that, hey, these guys and Casting Crowns, and that's kind of valuable when people start to see you in that light, and they say, if we're going to do an event at our church, let's get that band. They really are professional. They really got it together. So getting yourself together in a way that you can present what you do, and that you're writing good songs, doing your best to record well as well as you can with your resources. Having a good record is like a good business card,
Yeah.
Having an EPK, make a little video to tell your story. Don't start it with, hi, I'm so-and-so. I started playing guitar at the age of 8. Start off with a story, say something like, for years I've been a school teacher and I love music and I love teaching, but I also love leading worship. And people are immediately like, hey, this guy's a great guy. He's a blue-collar worker, but he also likes leading worship. I like this guy. Let's get him to come lead worship for us.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the kind of.
I think about guys like Jimmy Needham, who he's independent. He's not with a record label per se, and he's just so you would just kind of call him an indie artist, and he's just built a following. And I think there's something to be said about not forcing it. That doesn't mean don't work hard, but just kind of let it happen. And I think that's what he did. I mean, obviously he's a gifted songwriter, and he's got a unique niche, a cool voice, and so he's just kind of let that happen, and his following has just naturally built, rather than many artists, I think, will just try to force it because they want it to happen, and so they're just trying to quote, make it happen. And so I think it's there's something to be said about just let it happen naturally. So
yeah, that's good. And I think you got to take advantage of technology nowadays. So you should make like lyric videos of your songs that you've written. You should put videos, create your own channel on YouTube, kind of push some cool content out every week or so on Facebook. Make sure you consistently growing your kind of social media base so that you get those opportunities, because people see you got to become visible in this world of noise out there if you want to have opportunities. So it's the same as marketing anything, really.
Definitely.
On that level, yeah.
We've got another question here. It says, what do you do personally in hard times, such as car breaking down, your finances short, etc.? What do you do? I can remember when I was with Big Daddy Weave before they signed with a label. So, I mean, everything that we did was on us as far as travel and all that kind of stuff. And I remember we were traveling to a gig in North Alabama. And so 4 of the guys were in Mike's beat up Ford Explorer pulling a trailer. And me and the saxophone player, Joe, we were in his car. And, their Explorer, they had traveled in that thing for, the entire time. And here they are pulling this weighted down trailer. And so about halfway up, the transmission blows on the Explorer. and here we are. We got to get to this conference or whatever that we were doing, and so basically, I mean. The only thing we could do is me and Joe had to go on, and the other guys waited for the tow truck to show up, and I think they had them tow them the rest of the way, which is probably like 200 miles or something like that to the gig. So it was a long way, and then they had to get it fixed and all that. And so, when life throws you lemons, you kind of make lemonade, So we just had to pull together, and fortunately, I think they had some savings or whatever to help take care of that. But definitely, in those times, you have to be prepared. So if you're on your own going around, you're driving your own car, you got to be prepared for those kinds of things. Try to help have some savings when finances are short. Man, it may be just best not to go out. Wait and save some money. You'll know definitely if you need to, but and then I think the biggest thing is just prayer. Whenever times get tough, you just pray that God helps you through it, helps you understand what's going on, and ask Him to provide.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I think some of this stuff is common sense. If you might want to get with someone that knows finances in your church. There's a book called Jump Ship, which Josh Ship wrote, he's my partner in a thing called CMI Academy, which talks a lot about how to book your own band and all that kind of stuff. It's a little online school for indie artists that you might want to check out. But what we do is, the idea of saying, at what point can you jump ship doing what you're doing to earn an income to go out and do what you love doing? And he has some rules that are like, you need to have saved up X amount of money for so many months, and so that you can be ready to do something instead of it being like right on the edge of your income, and then you go try to do something crazy. The other thing is, if you've got 6 kids and your wife can't work because she's got little babies, then it's not the wisest thing to start trying to go out and tour and hope that people are going to book you. Right. You've got to have X amount of bookings already happening. You've got to have at least 2 or 3 months worth of shows booked. Otherwise, it's just silliness. It's just not realistic to try and think, hey, I'm going to go out there and start touring. But I mean, for me, I'm in it already. So I've been doing this for 16 years in the States, and so for me there have been months, especially in December, if you're not on a Christmas tour, there's no real CCM going on. So what you have to do is, you do whatever you can. Nothing's below you. I went and burned CDs for a company that made these little kid CDs, like Barney with the kid, they were the Barney and like the Disney characters singing songs with your child's name in it. So I was doing that all day for $12 an hour, just over Christmas, just so that I could feed my family. If you need to go and and I would really recommend that you work during the week if you're going to play out on the weekends. Don't just think that you're going to, because the more you can save up and the more you can put away, the better decisions you can make. If you're making decisions based out of fear, you're going to take the wrong gigs, you're going to do the wrong events. You'll be like, I'll do whatever I can. I'll sing. I'll go and play in a death metal band as long as they can pay the rent. And if you've got money in the bank, you'll be like, no way am I playing in a death metal band. That's not what God called me to do. But if you're acting out of fear because of finances, you're going to take whatever gig you can get, and it won't be within that boundary of what God's told you to do.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and I think there's something to be said. I loved what you said about, not the idea of things being beneath you. Really, taking those opportunities. There's a guy down here in South Florida that, he was barely able to make ends meet as a musician. Great musician, great arranger. And then one day he got a gig just doing a couple of simple little tracks, programming some tracks for Disney down here. And they and it wasn't going to be a huge paying gig, and they loved what he did. And then they basically employed him to start doing all these tracks for Disney, and now he makes 6 figures doing that. And it was all because he took this one little job, this one little gig that, for him, he could have said, that's not really, my deal. And so definitely being open to taking those extra little gigs.
I think a good job is like an Uber driver, because you can you can turn on your Uber thing, and you can and if no one's there to pick up, you can write song lyrics, you can sit there singing, you can do whatever you want. You can do singing success, like you can plug it, put it into your CD player and exercise your vocal while you wait in the car.
You can get on worshipartistry.com and start learning how to play the songs, man.
That's right. That's good.
Hey, I think we got time for one more question, and I like this one down here at the bottom. It says, I'm attending college for a bachelor's in songwriting from Berklee College of Music. Should I start my own publishing company to keep all the royalties, or should I let a major publishing company pitch it and keep half of my song royalties? I know for me, I've written some songs that have been published through Integrity Music, and I started my own publishing company, because that's what I was advised to do. And I remember the first time that I went to them, they were interested in one of my songs, and I said, "Well, I've got my own publishing company," and they looked at me and said, "Do you want your song on the record?" And I was like, "Yeah." So ended up, having to turn the royalty over to them. And so I think one of the things, with that, just because you have your own publishing company or whatever through ASCAP or BMI or whatever, doesn't mean that you're going to be able to keep your royalties as a songwriter. I think it's those powerhouse guys, those powerhouse songwriters and artists, because they're well established, that they're now able to keep their song royalties, especially if they're going with a label. If you're independent, then yeah, hold on to it, I think. What would you have to say about that, Daniel?
Yeah, I'd say definitely start your own little publishing company so that you can collect the publishing side of the earnings if you're actually out there playing on your own.
Yeah.
Or if you write a worship song that's a CCLI song and there's royalties coming in, there's going to be a publishing side of it and there's going to be a songwriting side of it.
Right.
And until that song gets cut by someone big, you want to be able to collect both, which is the publishing and the songwriting. So you definitely need to have a name, but at that point you can negotiate and say, like, a good example would be the Good Father song. The guys from House Fires that wrote that song, they had all their publishing, they made it, they recorded on their own record, and then Tomlin's company said, when it was actually it's not Integrity, what's the company that
Worship
Tomlin's
Together?
with? No,
Worship Together?
Was Worship Together is the worship section within Capitol Records.
Oh, yeah.
So Capitol said to them, "Listen, we want to do this song, but if we're going to do it, we want to have all the publishing." And then there was another record label was like, "We'll take half the publishing," and they decided, well, if Chris Tomlin's going to record it, and if it's going to go out through the biggest kind of worship label, then we're going to go with that label. So they decided to, at that point, it's a decision of, would you rather have a smaller piece of a very big pie or a big piece, the whole piece of a tiny little pie?
Right.
And that's all kind of business decisions that you have to make at that point in that particular song, But as far as being your own songwriter, and if you're going to be out there on your own independently, definitely get a little name that you can put your stuff to and your own little publishing little deal. It's not going to be something that you just have to look after your own royalties, basically.
Yeah.
If you start noticing that your songs are being sung all over the place, though, I would start to look for an admin deal, which is giving away half the publishing to someone to make sure that they collect everything for you.
Right.
Which is better than nothing. It's better than giving it all away and then for no reason. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. Hey, thanks, guys, for chiming in with us here, sending your questions. If you have any more questions, you can always go to our forums on worshipartistry.com, and you can ask your questions there. We're always available to answer to the best of our ability and everything. And be sure to check us out at worshipartistry.com, and stay tuned because we do have other very cool podcasts coming up in the upcoming weeks. So thanks for your time, and we'll see you guys later.
Thank you, Ryan.
Awesome, man. Take care.
Thank you.